Welcome to the Femcast, where women's voices aren't just heard, they're amplified. This is more than a podcast, it's a movement. A space where we break the silence, spark conversations, and stand together for equality, inclusion, and change. Every episode, we bring stories, ideas, and voices that challenge, inspire, and empower. So if you believe in the power of women's voices to change the world, hit subscribe and join our community across social media at The Femcast. Or visit our website www.thefemcast.com. Together we rise, we roar, we rewrite the narrative. This is The Femcast, and I'm your host, Anita White-Moran. In this week's episode on the Gaslit Brain series, we share a powerful real-life story. A woman trapped in a workplace ruled by manipulation. A male colleague who moved goalposts, withheld information, and thrived on abuse and control. She spoke up, she asked for help, and the system punished her. Her story exposes what too many of us know. Organisations protect abusers while branding whistleblowers difficult. It's not just toxic, it's systemic. From academia to boardrooms, this isn't just one woman's story. It's a mirror of a society that normalises deceit, control, and silence. We need resistance, we need education, we need unity. Because the most dangerous kind of abuse is the one we're told doesn't exist. This is the Femcast, where we expose manipulation, unpack the neuroscience, and reclaim our power. I'm your host, Anita White-Moran.
You're very welcome back to the Gaslit Brain, Jen. And today we're starting with stories that we put a call out for people to send in their stories. So I'm going to take one of these stories now, and then we're going to dissect it, go through it, call out the red flags and how we can identify them early. So this lady wrote in and she said, I worked with a male colleague and myself and many others on my team experienced ongoing psychological abuse and gaslighting. Things like periods of grooming and building people up, and then slowly and subtly begins the erosion process. Behaviours escalated when you stood up for yourself and attempted to set boundaries. Intentionally not giving clarity on expectations and shifting goalposts, so there was always a reason to punish those he targeted. Creating chaos and fires intentionally to keep others off balance, then coming in to save the day at the last minute. Withholding of critical information for people to do their jobs. Constantly shifting blame and using guilt trips to keep people in line. Pitting people against each other. Taking credit of others' work or redirecting credit to others. Aggression, verbal and non-verbal, and intimidation tactics. I was a whistleblower in this situation, stood up to him directly for myself and others, attempted to make changes on the team to help protect people. Then he came after me with full force. I experienced retaliation, sabotage, etc. It was like psychological warfare. It's been a long road. I eventually requested a transfer to a new team, and then he proceeded to go after my direct reports. After both of my direct reports quit and reported what they experienced, leadership and HR finally listened. The pattern was undeniable. The catch is, he is still employed with my company. He received a demotion and no longer leads a team. But honestly, that is not nearly enough. Now I'm dealing with the aftermath and complex PTSD. It is truly so disturbing, and I struggle to convey the impact of coercive control to others. For example, when I initially shared what was happening with senior leadership, the response was, I needed to be more assertive and set better boundaries. However, what they didn't understand was I was doing that for myself and others, and each time I did, I was punished in a number of ways. And of course, the process of conditioning and brainwashing is quite terrifying. The gaslighting and psychological warfare tactics are sickening. It's crazy how something like this impacts both your mental and physical health. Not everyone understands it. I worked with this colleague for over 5 years. For a long time, I didn't recognise the pattern. It was subtle at first, praise here and there, charm, charisma, but underneath there was control. The turning point came during a discussion about disability accommodations for an employee. He became aggressive, red in the face, yelling, standing over me. It was physically intimidating. He blamed me for things completely out of my control and used guilt to try and silence me. The next morning he showed up with coffee from my favourite cafe, like nothing had happened. That moment shattered the illusion. I realised I was in a deeply manipulative cycle, classic abuse dynamics. Punishment followed by reward. That's when I started connecting the dots. I began researching workplace bullying, psychological abuse, and what experts call the dark triad leadership behaviours. I asked for a transfer almost immediately, but leadership took nearly 4 months to act. During that time, I existed in a constant state of fear, bracing, watching, overanalyzing. I second-guessed every decision, every email, every one-to-one, every project assignment felt like a trap. The psychological toll was immense, but the physical toll was just as real. The trauma didn't stay in my head, it settled in my body. I developed chronic lower back pain and sciatica from constant bracing. My pelvic floor muscles were locked in tension. I needed physical therapy to begin releasing that. I clenched my jaw unconsciously, day and night. My nervous system was stuck in a relentless cycle of fight, flight, freeze and fawn. When I finally moved to a new team, I thought things would improve, but the symptoms didn't just linger, they intensified. My former direct reports were still in that environment. One felt so unsafe she left the company. Another came forward with her own experiences, requested a transfer, and ultimately quit after facing retaliation. I felt powerless watching the same cycle repeat, unable to protect the people I once led. And what made it worse was the absence of real accountability. It felt like this leader was being protected while I was viewed as a liability. That lack of justice made me feel even more unsafe. Earlier this year, I was officially diagnosed with PTSD. I'm receiving treatment, but the effects are ongoing. I still experience decision-making paralysis, memory lapses, heightened anxiety, and deep emotional exhaustion. Even in a healthier team environment, I remain hypervigilant, on guard, cautious, slow to trust. Healing has become a full-time process. I'm doing the work through therapy, somatic healing, and trauma-informed care. I've learned workplace abuse doesn't stay at work. It embeds itself in your body, your thoughts, your relationships, your sense of safety, your entire life. Until organisations take psychological safety seriously, not just in theory, but through meaningful accountability, these patterns will continue to harm people silently, systemically, and often invisibly. That could be anywhere in the world. It happens to be in the States. It's stuff I've experienced, you've experienced. We talked about it on our previous series, The Bullied Brain and the Dark Triad, and, the reward followed by abuse. Like the flowers we talked about on another episode, bringing flowers. It was in the report. Like, why would he bring flowers if he was abusing me? Typical, like, domestic abuse and coercion and coercive control in the workplace.
Yeah. It's what I found powerful in listening to this woman. I mean, many things, but just to start the ball rolling. First of all, notice how incredibly articulate she is. She's so articulate. She's so insightful. Most people don't even get to that place. They are the people that she describes who quit, who just need to get away. They recognize how poisonous it is, but they don't have anything that they can marshal to fight back. And, your only option is to go to HR. Your only option is to go to senior leadership. And oftentimes, as she points out, and as I write about in the Gaslit Brain, I literally found myself writing this sentence that the only true protected class in the workplace is the abuser. The senior leadership in HR will do everything to protect the abuser, and they will allow just a wake of destruction, behind them, and they won't do anything about it. And I mean, look, they're still harboring that guy at work. I find it unbelievable. He is going to do nothing but erode that organization, whether he's in a managerial position or not. When somebody is that mentally ill, they are so infectious, so destructive. And look at the organizations keeping him in place. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's staggering. Organizations want productivity. They want a happy workforce. When you imagine they'd want a happy workforce, they don't want people leaving jobs because of the hassle of having to hire, get companies in, the interview process. I understand it in the place I came from because it was owner managed. Like, what's he going to do? Fire himself for abuse? But for a company to allow this to continue and give a little demotion.
I mean, when you think about it, the whole point of the organization, the whole point of the company, the whole point of business is profit, right? And profit is something that you're perpetually measuring, losses and profits and so on. And yet they will keep somebody at work. They'll fire someone for incompetence. They'll fire someone because, technology has replaced their job. They'll fire people for anything, no problem, anytime. Not if they're abusive. If they're abusive, oftentimes they'll promote them. There's an excellent book that came out this year that's been written about how this dynamic unfolds. It's called The Dark Pattern, and it's by two business professors in Switzerland. It's absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best things I've read in ages. And in The Dark Pattern, they unpack how it works in these types of organizations. And inevitably, it leads to the collapse of the company. It leads to suicides. It leads to massive profit loss, all kinds of lawsuits. I mean, the irony is that woman says they treat me like the liability, which again, I write about this extensively in the Gaslit Brain. I compare the abusive individual to the whistleblower. Just she's the whistleblower. Well, the company and the mindset, and actually, like, as you know, I talk about it on a brain level. What's happening in the brain is complex things are happening in the leadership's brain that makes them pursue the destructive course of protecting the abuser and ousting the whistleblower. Truth tellers are not permitted. If you tell the truth, you must be silenced. And we're watching this geopolitically right now. We're watching that if you dare critique, criticize, satirize what is happening up on high, you will be silenced. You will be completely oppressed. And it's really remarkable to watch because it's so incredibly dangerous. And we're seeing it unfold in real time. So she says, I'm the liability. And that's because in this type of a toxic workplace, the one thing they deeply fear more than anything is if you tell them the truth.
Or like they'll silence it, like the people that went before me silenced. I went as far as I could go because I needed to show the patterns, the untruths that were told, how they contradicted themselves. And it's never about one party winning or the other. It was about showing, because you can't do the work we're doing if we can't show the pattern and we can't prove it. So you just let it play out. And you don't even contradict the lies that are told and the untruths. And if you refer back to this investigation or you go back to this, you just let it play out. And then later you can show, well, this is what he said here. And then he contradicts it. And it's interesting, the language. I think we need to do something on the language as well in another episode about the language they use as well. One using starting sentences with 1,000,000,000%, no such thing, 1,000,000%. I'm nearly 99.98% sure. It's all that language. I played a tape we used to a room of people because I wanted to get opinions, different age groups, different people in leadership. And the one thing, the women cringed, but the men said, that wasn't the question he was asked. He was asked, how did you reassure her? And the investigation where he said, I was just repeating what was said, but that wasn't the question he was asked. And you see, the women are uncomfortable because they know the language, they hear the language. The men laughed at, I'm a CEO and I'm a really intelligent CEO. And they picked up on the other stuff really quickly as well. Whereas the women were cringing. And you could see, because it's played out in so many workplaces and homes, that this is the language of abusers. Mm-hmm. And it's really telling. And I think that's what we need to do on one of the episodes. It's language literacy and stop all this gaslighting and whitewashing abuse.
Yeah, it's as we were talking about, there's nothing more important in this world right now than young people, but all people, but they should be highly trained in how to decode language. They need to recognize when gaslighting is occurring, and many don't. And so, as you and I were talking about, I write this regular Substack called Bully Brain because the brain is perpetually being bullied in these instances. And when you get bullied, as the brain science shows, you have a trauma reaction, just as this woman is describing. She recognizes all the signs, fight. You yourself become aggressive. You find yourself yelling, and that's not even your personality, but your stress response has taken over. And you're so powerfully in fear and defense, and you become someone unlike yourself. It happens to lots of people. So you go into fight mode, you go into flight mode, You look at her colleagues, they just disappeared. They left the company. The company loses so much money in losing that employee, paying them out, and then retraining for that position. What a waste of profit. But they do it over and over again. They let the abuser continue their destructive path. And so fight, flight, and then freeze, she talks about complete paralysis, not being able to speak, not being able to report, not being able to function. Everybody's experienced that pretty much too. And then the final one, fawn, which is so interesting and isn't talked about. Those very often. The abuser will use the fawn response, which is that you try to appease, you try to be charming, you notice their charisma, you like that you're being favored, and you get these opportunities, and it's all about them manifesting power and control. And then you find yourself looking the other way while he hurts someone in front of you. And as soon as you start to buy into that, and she obviously is not that person, she's the person that speaks up. When he starts to hurt people, she's like, that's my line in the sand. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm going to fight for their rights to go to work and be safe and not be maltreated every day. And look what happens to her. She has to move. She has to go somewhere else. She has to request a transfer. And she takes all of the damage with her, which is so tragic. And she talks about how it's in her body and it's affecting the rest of her life. Like, it's really serious. In domestic abuse, you can show, I am beaten black and blue. I've got a broken jaw. I have a concussion. And even then, our society is like, oh, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to change this. We don't have any ways to stop this being normalized in our culture. It's like, really? But at work, you don't have any bruises. You don't have a broken jaw. What you're having is all kinds of internal damage. Your brain, as we've talked about extensively in the bullied brain, science shows you are suffering damage, physical damage to your brain architecture. And then she describes what's happening within the body. And what happens within the body is all kinds of harm to blood pressure, to heart. She's talking about muscle tension. They know it's correlated with cancer. They know it's correlated with autoimmune diseases, et cetera, et cetera. Once again, what are the policy writers? What are the lawmakers? What are the workplace cultures doing about this? Not much. I mean, we talk about, oh, I'm trauma informed. Well, what good is that going to do anybody? Being trauma informed, how does that protect anyone? Where are the laws? Where's the education that says you can't do this at work? You can't maltreat people at work, because we have all kinds of ways to measure the harm that you're doing to them. This woman's got a PTSD diagnosis from going to work and trying to be a loyal employee who serves her company and her clients. Like, it's unbelievable to me. Anyway, I think we are in a desperate need of change. I think that because we're not getting the laws that we need, we have to take the matters into our own hands in terms of getting educated. We need to be able to understand what gaslighting is, how it's used as a tool, and see it right in the moment. So just to give one final quick thing on language, I wrote this week about, this is a geopolitical example, but it's a really good one. So Vladimir Putin in Russia, and he calls her the Children's Rights Commissioner. So by her title alone, you assume she is going to protect the rights of children, right? Her position tells your brain that's who she is, that's what she does. Okay, so this is a good gaslighting example. So what happens is Putin and his commissioner abduct all kinds of Ukrainian children. They abduct them. They take them away from their parents, away from their families, away from their country, and they put them into work camps in Russia. And in the work camps in Russia, there's quite a number of them being trained for war. They're going to go to war against Ukraine. They're being trained to be Russian soldiers. So think about what's happening here. Here's the gaslighting. Putin and his commissioner for children's rights tell you, when they get questioned, this is a war crime that you're committing. They get questioned. They say, there's no wrongdoing. There's no wrongdoing here. The children came willingly with us. And we are taking them to a place where they can be safe. It's for their safety. Okay, so here's the gaslighting. And that should be making your brain melt, because you are being manipulated. And it's terrible for your brain. What they're saying is they invade Ukraine. They make it unsafe. They're bombing, they're killing, they're murdering. They create the unsafe conditions. And then they say that they must protect the children through abduction. So they're saying to your brain, abduction is protection. They're saying to you, the danger we've created is actually safety. We're saving these children. And then it's an outright lie that the children came willingly with them. I mean, it's so blatant and obvious. But that is how gaslighting works on the geopolitical scale. And then we are all experiencing it, or many of us, in the workplace as well. It's normalized.
It's so normalized. And like, I feel sorry for the 20-year-olds that are coming up along and growing up with this, and those that are leaving school and not critical thinkers, not asking questions, not questioning everything. Why are we doing this? Why would you say that? Why would you behave like that? Like, at least at our age, it might have been a bad experience, but we have been questioning stuff and we're raising it and trying to change the futures of other children and workers coming up behind us.
Well, they're saying that kids now, the young ones, teenagers, 20-somethings, they're saying, you know what? Goodbye phone. Goodbye social media. Get out of my brain. And it's the smartest thing they can do because they've grown up being trained, unable to concentrate. They can't sustain focus. And focus is one of our brain's great powers. It's one of the most critical parts of our brains, is to be able to zero in and focus on something in a sustained manner and to think, to problem solve, to be creative. All of that is eliminated by relentless social media clips and bits and sound bites. It has scrambled the ability to think. And if you can't think and you can't question and you aren't highly critical and skeptical, you are victimized in this world right now. So yeah, I want to see young people completely empowered. I want to see them doing the reading. They need to read. Literacy is critical for them, not because it's old fashioned, but because it's really good for their brains. They need to be doing that type of training so that when they encounter manipulative language, like this woman is describing, she describes it so brilliantly at work. The idea of the moving goalposts. That's a hard thing to report. You know, one day it's this and one day it's this. It's like, well, that's not a crime. That's not illegal. That's not wrong. Well, what about withholding information? That's not a crime. That's not illegal. How are you supposed to report that a passive act, he didn't do X? I mean, it's just, you can see how gaslighting can just insinuate itself in. It's very difficult to identify, let alone report. When you report it, it sounds minor. It's not like he broke your leg. He just broke your ability to be able to do your work. Well, that's just as serious. You know, if I stole something from a store, I would be held legally. That's a crime. If I shoplifted something, the police would come. It would be a crime. And that would be that. But in the workplace, I can steal someone else's work. I can put my name on it. I can say that I did it. I can get the accolades and the promotion for it. And that's completely legal. There's no police coming knocking on the door when you steal someone's work or you steal their health or their confidence or their ability to get their job done or their relationships with other or their career or their livelihood. You can steal all those things with impunity.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I think we need to really hammer it home. It's coercive control in the workplace. It's just a different door it's behind. The behaviors are the same. These people are mentally ill and they're causing so much illness. Like, it's a ripple effect on people who are going home to children and they're trying to regulate before they walk through the door to work with their children that evening to do homework, their relationship with their partners, their family. And it's all consuming when you're abused in the workplace. It's you eat, sleep and breathe it. And like that lady describes it so well, it settles in your body.
Yeah, I mean, what was amazing, kind of heartbreaking, is she now has to heal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so
at her own expense as well.
At her own expense. And as she says, it's a full-time job, getting better from his virus, his infection. What's not happening in the workplace is the workplace didn't say to him, you know what, you're suspended until you get a clean bill of health. When you can show that your brain has returned to organic, normal brain health, which it's not in right now. If you could look at that guy's brain, you could see that there's a major problem, you know, and none of that is being used. So she, the victim of his illness, his virus that he brought into the workplace, she has to do all the healing. And our whole world is focused on that. Psychiatry, psychology, medicine, all these different counselors and therapists and ways of healing the damage done. What I'm not seeing is where is all the focus on how much the perpetrators need mental health repair before they go back to work. If they had an actual virus, like if they had COVID-19 or any other virus, they'd not be allowed to go to the workplace. They would be stopped. Everybody would suddenly put masks on. Everyone would disinfect. It would be seen as a completely dangerous organizational illness happening. But he can go in with the mentally ill virus and nothing is done. Everybody normalizes it. It's normal to be command control. And Anita, going back to the point you were making before about school, our kids are being raised in the 21st century, not only just on the phone and social media, which is highly, highly toxic. All the research shows it's incredibly bad. We've never seen such high levels of mental illness in our youth populations. Never. And we've never seen such high suicides. Never. And what's happening? Everything is just churning along. Same old, same old, same old. Kids are put in front of unregulated social media, and the social media giants that make gazillions of dollars are allowed to totally taint their brains. That's normal in our society. And at the same time, it's normal to send them to schools where we train them in obedience. We train them in being compliant. When the adult in the room says jump, they are to say how high. I mean, how many schools, how many teachers are empowered to actually teach kids to get up and move because it's actually really good for your brain? The more you do aerobic fitness, the better for your brain. How many teachers are empowered to teach them mindfulness? That's one of the best things for your brain. How many are able to teach them how to be critical thinkers, highly skeptical, psychologically informed to be absolute nth degree, because that's how you survive? No, they're being taught to fill in worksheets, to sit in desks, to prepare themselves for a mindless factory world where they are being, as we all know, that we're watching it unfold. The crushing of the middle class, this stripping of the ability to even pay basic bills for housing or food, as the money is all funneled up into the elites who are like the new kings. They're the new oligarchs. They're the new emperors. We've gone backwards 100%. It's amazing to watch.
If you're finding this conversation valuable, make sure to hit subscribe to the Femcast so you never miss an episode of the Gaslit Brain series with Dr. Jen Fraser. And don't forget, her powerful new book, The Gaslit Brain, is out on the 4th of November 2025. You can pre-order your copy right now by clicking the link in our bio. Join us in raising awareness and demanding more psychologically safe workplaces and communities. This is the Femcast.
Jen, when are we all going to come together as a society and say enough of the hamster wheel? Going out, working in these organisations, getting sicker, our children are getting sicker, and say, just do a blackout day where we just say nobody turns up for work until we have equal pay, equal rights. If you have a health crisis, you know the expense on your body financially and physically from workplace abuse and being a whistleblower. I know it. This lady knows it. Across the globe, we all know how it feels. But when are we going to say enough, and when are we going to get government to say, right, we need to do something now? Nobody's turning up for work. Our children aren't even going to school because they're not learning anything. They're not learning the basics of what is acceptable, and we've normalized so much that's really harmful.
Yeah, no. Something that I say a lot is there's power in numbers. And we need to stand together, and we need to protect human rights. We need freedom of speech. We need freedom of association. We need freedoms to be able to have healthy, happy, high-performing lives. And we're watching it be stripped away slowly but surely. So we have these kind of the microcosm of the workplace, the microcosm of the school, highly unhealthy places for far too many of us. Then we have the macrocosm of what we're seeing, this erosion of democracy, this normalization that we're going to go back to the feudal era where we toil for these huge dictatorships. It basically is what it is. I look back on my life and I can see the erosion starting and how people let it happen. So I came out with a PhD in Canada from the University of Toronto, and the University of Toronto hired me right away. I defended my exams with distinction. Within a year, my dissertation was published by an American university press. Like, that's high level scholarship. It doesn't get higher when you're a young scholar. And I was hired by the institution that trained me, and I was paid $20,000 a year to do a full professor's load. Now, the full professors, none of them had books published. These are my colleagues. These are the senior scholars. They are paid probably $150,000 a year. They teach the same amount as me. They have benefits. They have job security. They have everything. And they were all comfortable knowing that I was paid as a sessional $20,000, no pay in the summertime for 4 months, and no benefits and no job security. I did that for 6 years. And then I started to say to myself, I can't afford to be doing this kind of highly abusive work. I can't pay the bills. I mean, my husband had a job and that was fine, but what household today is paid enough? Our salaries have been stagnant since the 1970s. Our cost of living has gone through the roof, especially in Canada. You can't buy a house, like just a basic healthy house that you might live in, for anything less than $1 million to $2 million. That's normal here. So no one can afford it. So people are in massive amounts of debt. They can't afford food. They can't afford childcare. They're working like they've always worked so hard. I mean, I could have started work at 22, but I did a PhD. It's like getting to be a person who was an innovator and a critical thinker and could educate young, university students. And it's almost like I was penalized for the fact that I had done this intensive work that was condoned by my society. I was on full scholarship the entire time I did my master's and PhD. It's not like I was not good at what I did. I did everything that I was expected to do and have done nothing but suffered for it in my professional life. Now, if the professors had refused to go to work, if they had said, we do not allow for this type of abusive practice in our university, 30% of the English department at University of Toronto was running on young scholars being paid dirt, absolute dirt. After many were in debt, having done their PhD, I luckily didn't have any debt, but many did. Being young, I didn't recognize that this was my first experience with professional abuse. I was being maltreated by my employer. They weren't beating me black and blue. They were just financially destroying me. And I had to walk away from university. And that's when I started teaching in private schools, because at least I had some job security. At least I had a decent salary. I had benefits. I had to walk away. That's like being a doctor, becoming a medical doctor and having to walk away because your profession is financially making it impossible for ends to meet even. And so you become, I don't know, a medical staff or something. What's all your education is like wasted. And I mean, I kept writing and researching and publishing, getting my books published, but it's a pretty red flag of the direction we're going in.
Yeah. It's mad that they're teaching the next generation coming up behind and teaching, you presume it would be to be critical thinkers and question things, and then they're letting their colleagues like live on the breadline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Years ago, I love that story about, James Gandolfini from The Sopranos. He sadly died. He refused to go into work until everybody was paid.
I love people like that. I love people like that. It's so impressive. I'm really glad that you've raised that, because really what we see with those types of people is it just takes one powerful person to say, I'm not okay with this. This isn't fair. This isn't honest. This isn't healthy. We will never be high performing if we continue down this path. And one of the things I love in The Dark Pattern, it's something that I wrote about in The Bullied Brain, and then I saw it again in The Dark Pattern. And it's a tale that we should all be thinking about right now, which is The Emperor's New Clothes. Now, that's a fairy tale from 100 years ago. And The Emperor's New Clothes teaches us that really what happens is we're afraid. The greatest tool that the abuser and the gaslighter have is to make everyone feel afraid. So my professors, who I love, they were great people, my colleagues, they were afraid. They were afraid they'd lose their jobs. They were afraid they'd lose their tenure. They didn't want to be a rabble-rouser at their employer and maybe not get promotions or not get opportunities to do the research they wanted to do, whatever. They wouldn't get their sabbaticals. They didn't want to rock the boat, and they were willing to look the other way, put blinders on to betrayal, and just let it happen, But you talk about someone who speaks up and stands up and says, I'm not going to work in a workplace that isn't fair. It's manipulative, that's hurting people. Sorry. And I mean, you did that as a whistleblower. I did that as a whistleblower. And we both know there's a lot of retaliation. The woman's story who wrote in from Texas, there's retaliation when you dare to speak up. So in The Emperor's New Clothes, it's a story about fear. The emperor has made everyone so afraid that they can't even trust their own perception or speak their truth or speak truth to power. That's what the story is about. So just to remind people, if you don't remember it, this is an emperor in a fairy tale land. He gets convinced by these swindlers, these tailors, that they're going to make him these beautiful golden clothes. And he's a fashionista. All he cares about is clothes. He's got a very narrow focus. All about him, all about how he looks, all about his clothes. So these tailors keep getting more and more money from him as they keep saying that they're building this beautiful outfit, but there's nothing there. They built nothing. They're just getting all his money. And so they convince the emperor that here's the beautiful clothes, and they're telling him these are beautiful clothes. It's perfect gaslighting, right? The emperor can't see anything. There's nothing there, but they're telling him, oh, no, these are beautiful clothes. Just like Putin is telling you that he's abducted children to protect them, and you're supposed to believe that. So the emperor walks out of his castle naked and parades all through the streets for all the populace to praise his beautiful outfit, but he's naked. And so it's really interesting where the prime minister, for example, is asked, what do you think of his beautiful clothes? And this is the thing that I loved about these Swiss business scholars. What they recognized is the prime minister doesn't see anything. He sees a naked man, right? So that's the reality. That's his perception. He sees that there's no clothing on the emperor. But, and this is how gaslighting works, he thinks that it's his problem. He's like, okay, just a second. The emperor is telling me that he's got golden clothes on. The tailors are saying they've made these beautiful golden clothes. Everyone else is saying there's beautiful golden clothes on the emperor, and I don't see them. Problem is with me. My perception is not to be trusted. I better fake it because I don't want anyone to know that I see a naked man, because I'm clearly the outlier here. It's my problem. That's gaslighting. They don't use that word, the Swiss scholars, but that's what I call it. And it's brilliant. And the tailors have done all of this. You always ask with gaslighting, okay, what's the agenda? Well, the agenda is just pure and simple. It's money. The tailors want the emperor's money. They've gotten handsomely paid for doing nothing, and they're going to walk away with a big, big amount of money. That's the agenda. They want money. And if you can just get the gaslighting right down to its basic level, once you identify the agenda, then you're in a better position to go, you know what? The emperor is naked. And just let it happen. What do you do? Get put in jail? Probably. And it's a big risk. And so the only person, why I wrote about this in The Bully Brain, is the only person that has the ability, that hasn't been wired yet to obey and be fully compliant. And when the person in a position of power, like the Children's Rights Commissioner, tells you that she is doing X, Y, and Z for whatever reason, so she says to you, jump, and you've been trained to reply, how high? That's the only thing your brain can do anymore. Social media tells you you have to have a phone perpetually in front of your face or you can't survive. You're like, yes, master, right? So it's only a kid that hasn't been in the school system long enough who pipes up and says, yeah, the emperor has no clothes. He's naked. Everybody else is bowing and scraping and fawning at his feet. And the kid says, he's naked.
Yeah, but like the innocence and the honesty of a child, you could clearly put 4 or 5-year-olds into a boardroom and, when they explain it to a child like you would to a 3 or 4-year-old, and the child actually thinks and questions it. We actually need these small people in boardrooms to question stuff because we've just normalized everything. We've come to the school system, the college system, and workplace, and we've normalized really toxic, bad behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Printed.
I know. I mean, it's a very hot topic here right now in North America and globally probably, where the satirist, the comedian, the critic, he's a critic. He's a critic of the political powers. He's a critic of the administration. He's a critic of what's happening in his country. Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel speaks up and says, what he said, and he's fired. Now, what's interesting to me is
But he didn't say anything. I've watched this clip so many times this week. He talks about it because he's employed to question stuff. Satire, you're meant to be able to use it, and those that are it's delivered to and you're receiving it and hearing it, you know it's satire. And the only thing that he called out was Trump acting like a child, saying, oh yeah, and what about all the trucks? What about all the trucks building the ballroom? They've always wanted a ballroom. And Kimmel just says, yeah, he's at the fourth stage of grief, construction, like a child would be grieving over a goldfish. That's all he said.
It's so, absolutely, that's completely true. He also said that the individual who shot the influencer he's very much kind of from a right-wing background. He's very right. He doesn't have leftist ideology, if anything. And this is all part of gaslighting too. The tragedy is he lives in an online world of violence. He lives in an online world where it's all about shooting and killing. And he lives in a country where shooting and killing is just a daily norm. Kids go to school and they can be shot in that country. It's normal, completely normal. I want to talk about the normalizing. Hold that thought for 1 second, because it's an important brain function that I want to talk about. But before that, I just want to say, so he's a satirist, just as you say. He didn't say anything, but he's being fired because he is lying to the American people. That's reason number one. Reason number two that they've said he's being fired is because what he said was offensive. So what's critical here is the gaslighting, to my mind. What you're seeing is a powerful administration who's highly threatening, who uses fear as a weapon. If you speak against them in any way, or you shine a spotlight on how they're being manipulative, then you will be silenced in whatever way they can do it. I mean, in Russia, they just put you in prison and they poison you like they did to Navalny. America's not yet at that stage. The administration is just getting you fired. That's their big thing. You're fired. So that type of silencing, of course, is very dangerous. So people are speaking up in extreme distress about it. But from the gaslighting point of view, you can see the incredible hypocrisy at work. The hypocrisy is, I'm a highly moral person who condemns you for being immoral. You're a liar and you're offensive. Wait a second. Isn't the person, the leader of the whole country, identified as a pathological liar? He lies every single day, multiple times. And he's one of the most highly offensive people that we've ever had the pleasure of having to listen to. Those are his qualities. And what happens in gaslighting is you project your qualities onto someone and then you punish them for it. So Jimmy Kimmel gets punished for what the leadership actually demonstrates. And that's what he pointed out. He said, you want him to be left, but he's actually right. You know, he pointed out with satire that gaslighting. And so, you know, retaliation, right? They've got the power, they will silence. And it just gets scarier from there. That's a very slippery slope. You know, do we start putting the comedians and the intellectuals? The intellectuals are fleeing the United States. They're coming to Canada. They're moving to Canadian universities as we speak because they see the slide into fascism. And people are afraid to even talk about it because who's going to be next? And that fear is the same fear that gets unpacked in The Emperor's New Clothes. It is a story that everyone should be reading right now and making decisions on. Am I going to succumb to the fear and look the other way while people are harmed and hope that it never comes to my doorstep and it never hurts me and it never hurts my family and my friends and my colleagues? Because that's what they want you to do. They want you to be complicit in their immorality, in their power grab, in their cruelty, in their lawlessness, in their lying. They want you to be complicit so that you can no longer fight back and they just take over.
We had this in history with Hitler. He started out with, 7 or 12 people and then garnered support millions. And this is what we're going back to, where they tell us what we're to wear, how to speak, who's the superior race.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at the ICE agents, you know, in their uniforms with their faces covered. It's like, really? That's really how you want to present yourself? Why can't you show your face? It's like a Ku Klux Klan white hood. If you're doing something that's acceptable, why do you need to wear a white hood? It's like, oof. Anyway, I want to talk about, as a final key point, they keep saying, oh, we're going back to, the rise of fascism with the Nazis. And that's absolutely ridiculous and unacceptable, because since that time, we have elaborate neuroscience. We have pages and pages and pages of research from laboratories that tell us how not to let that happen. And it goes back to a keyword you said, Anita. You said everything's being normalized. It starts in school, and then it's in the workplace. Next thing you know, it's a geopolitical phenomenon. Abuse is normalized. Lying is normalized. Social media manipulation, the complete misinformation, disinformation, they're allowed to do it completely unregulated. They can lie to our faces and manipulate our brains, including our youth. That is what the brain scientists call habituation. And as we saw in the Nazi era, and the neuroscientists talk specifically about that, our brains normalize anything. They will normalize cruelty. They will normalize falsehood. They normalize gaslighting. They normalize abusive workplaces. They normalize abusive schools. They will normalize anything given to them. And the reason being is our brains are so complex. And what they try to do is put things that are happening regularly into autopilot, so they don't have to give full resources, because the brain is always trying to manage all kinds of different complexities. So it's just, if you think of driving, we drive our cars every day, most of us. And so we are at a point now, when we first were driving, it had full brain power. We had to think about everything. There's a cyclist, there's the light is turning red, there's a skateboarder to the left, the car to my left is speeding. I need to think about everything, where I'm going, how I'm going to get there, what is my speed. It's all these different signs and regulations to follow. It's difficult. That's a huge brain power exercise. But when you do it regularly, it no longer takes that. Now you drive on autopilot. Your brain is able to do many other things because it knows driving so well that it can do it with its eyes closed. Unless something urgent happens and startles it, then full brain power comes back on. Okay, so that's what we do in our lives. We see a leader of a country lie so many times that we no longer register it. We see the leader of a country be highly abusive and cruel, but it's happened so many times we just normalize it. We see them taking away freedoms. Oh, that we've seen that before. And the brain just goes, okay, we've seen that before. That's normal. And that is our most dangerous quality. And so that is how we can slide back into fascism. But because we have the brain science, we know that we need to resist, that should be on the table every single day, front page news every single day. Do not let your brain habituate what's happening here. You should be on high alert, power in numbers. It's time to protest. It's time to refuse to go to the workplace that's abusive. Refuse to allow masked agents to come into your neighborhood and take your neighbors. You've got to stand.
Yeah, when is it going to happen, though? If you think about it, if there's one person owns a company, but there are hundreds of parents in this company that want to protect their children coming up behind them and make sure they're okay. When are they going to just say, right, enough, we've stopped normalizing it, don't want this for the next generation, don't want this for grandchildren, I want to stop now? Or what is the point in going through life? You're born, you get your education, you go to school, you work, you pay your bills. Some of them can't. We've seen so much poverty and people driven into poverty, all because of capitalism and greed and more gaslighting. And when are they going to say, look, what's the point in life if I'm just going to go through all this cycle, make money for someone else, my kids are going to suffer, I'm suffering, I've normalized abuse, and here we go, and same cycle, same cycle, same cycle.
Well, I think the example of unions is one of the most important examples today of how, when you band together, because there's, the leadership team is 3 people. The CEO is 1 person. You're hundreds. You band together and care for each other and support each other and ask for proper human pay, proper human rights, a livable salary, time to have holidays, an ability to afford shelter, a place for your family, childcare for your kids, since both people have to work now. But the salaries are so low that that's not enough for any kind of decent, safe, healthy life. It's amazing. So yeah, I think the unions are our best example of how we can make change when we stand together and we stop normalizing widespread abuse. And the other key thing is we have to see the bullying paradigm for what it is and how it works. It's the same thing every time. It's textbook every time. And we fall for it every time. And the key thing is you've got fear. We talk a lot about that. You use lots of humiliation. So that's the gaslighting piece where you make people feel that it's their fault. You're incompetent. You don't see the emperor's clothes. You are speaking up, so you're a liability. Humiliation is a powerful tool. Fear, humiliation, but this is the kicker. Favoritism. Favoritism is what Hitler does. He gets 7 to 10 people, and then he starts to spread it. So when he does things that are completely abusive, the 7 to 10 defend him to the ends of the earth. Oh, he's so wonderful. Oh, he's so great. And when you look at workplace bullying, what'll happen is they call it due process. This is all gaslighting. They don't even know it's gaslighting, but it is. They call it due process. Labor laws say everybody has their rights, etc. And really what happens is the person who's abusive has the right to abuse is how it ends. Because if you speak up about how abusive they are, the favorites speak up and go, but he's so wonderful to me. Then everybody turns around and goes, oh, the person speaking up must be the problem. Because look at all these people that are defending. So when you look geopolitically at the American leadership, for example, right now, he has surrounded himself with favorites. The favorites do not have the meritocracy or the competency or the ethics even to be in the positions they're in. They only have these positions because he is granted from his all-powerful perch their opportunity to do jobs they don't deserve. And so they'll do anything to defend him, praise him, say everything he does is magical and wonderful, and they will destroy other people without batting an eye. They're completely the favorites that are the necessary people that keep the abuse machine running.
Yeah, actually, I was speaking about this during the week. You know, when you're talking about the personalities of the abusers in the workplace where they're very childlike, like you see at Trump. They have tantrums, they're childish. The other thing is they want their egos massaged all the time. Aren't you great? And you're wonderful. And they attract the same kind of people in to do the flying monkeys, as we call them, to do their dirty work. When they take a step back and then it's like, well, let's see how he can do here. If you think about Pellico, where he had all these people coming around to his house, how do you even appeal to those people? How do you even know, like, there's people out there as sick as you?
Yeah, I know in the Gaslit Brain, I write about Giselle Pellico and what happened, and because it's such an amazing story. And what I love about her is in the courthouse, they tried to normalize what was done to her. And they told her about the language she has to use. And this goes back, Anita, to you and me talking about there's nothing more important right now than reading books. People need to get as educated as possible. They need the language. They need the vocabulary. They need to understand how the brain science works. That is one of their greatest defenses, the cognitive armor they need in this particular very dangerous era. And Giselle Pellico was brilliant at saying that. So in the court, they said, oh, we want you to refer to what happened to you as, I think they wanted it to be called something like video scenes. Oh, yeah. My husband is videotaping me while I'm unconscious and being repeatedly raped by men in the neighborhood. And you want me to call that a video scene? She's like, yeah, no, sorry. I'm going to call it rape. I think that's the more accurate term. And, that takes a lot of bravery. When you're in a courtroom, you're sort of the one who's supposed to adhere to the rules of the courtroom, right? It's justice. It's the law. It's a judge. Who are you to say what's the correct term? And there she is right there saying, oh, no. I'm not going to use euphemistic, manipulative language to talk about what's being done to me and my body by my own husband. I will use the term that I think is accurate. That is how you stand up against gaslighting.
Yeah. And the fact that these are people that are educated, the barristers, and twisting it and putting the victim on trial, when clearly, if you can't say no, you can't say yes when you're unconscious.
Yeah, I know. And the whole thing, really, it's just unbelievable.
Thank you, Jen, again, for another insightful episode. And I think next week we will talk about identifying the patterns, protecting yourself, and how have the language for senior leadership, HR, and what is actually happening.
Yeah, that'll be very helpful and valuable. The more we talk about that, the more we empower people how to use the right vocabulary to make a clear impression on the leadership and the HR people.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jen. Really appreciate your time and the work. We look forward to the Gaslit Brain in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks, Anita.
Thanks for tuning in to the Femcast today. If you believe in these conversations and want to help us keep shining a light on gaslighting and psychological harm, hit subscribe now. By reviewing these episodes, you also help us reach more people, raising more awareness so we can keep sharing these vital stories. And don't forget, Jen's groundbreaking new book, The Gaslit Brain, is out on November 4th. You can pre-order your copy today through the link in our bio. Until next time, let's keep building safer, more accountable communities, because together we can end the silence and spark real change. I'm Anita White-Moran, and this is the Femcast. Today's episode was edited by me and produced by badgoose.ie, the bold new challenger shaking up advertising across Ireland and the UK.